also recording now as well. Uh, Obviously, it's a strange time, strange situation. We're used to chatting together over different mediums. This is all very, very weird. We'll come to that in a minute. What I want to know is more about Carl Reader, because it's an interesting story. You are a qualified accountant and you director in a very, very successful firm. However, that's not what I want to talk about. You've gone where people try to go, and come on, becoming an internet influencer. Tell us why. Tell us more about Carl Reader.
Yeah, sure. So look, I think it's probably worth if I give a bit of my background and how I fell into the world that I did, because it kind of sows the seeds for the journey afterwards. So I was really fortunate that I went to a school that you'll know of, Andy, Southend High. So it's a grammar school, but I didn't realise quite what a gift I was given.
So you were quite intelligent then, because obviously it was a grammar school. I went to Eastwood. You know what I mean? You probably don't get worse schools than that at the time.
Well, my brother went to Eastwood and my old man did as well. So I would have been at Eastwood. But yeah, I passed my 11 plus and I didn't realise what a gift the grammar school system was to people. Right. Because obviously in where we live, there was 4 grammar schools, wasn't there? You had Southend Boys and Girls, Westcliff Boys and Girls, and Chelmsford had one as well. So it just felt like it was fairly normal. And I only realised, having moved away, that actually, like where we are at the moment, we'd have to drive 30, 40 miles to the nearest grammar school. Right. So I didn't realise what a gift that was, particularly at the time. So at the age of 15, I left school and started a YTS in hairdressing. So that was at the point that I got my So you can see it didn't go too well, but that's when I got my national insurance card. I just wanted to work and didn't really enjoy the academic world. Anyway, went back, did really badly with GCSEs and got a part-time job and realised I had to get a proper job of some shape or form. I couldn't carry on working 2 hours a day at Summerfields, the supermarket in Rayleigh. That wasn't enough to feed the family, so to speak, because I'd moved out and my girlfriend at the time was pregnant. I needed to do something proper with my life. So I started applying to jobs in the job paper. And do you remember Thursday evening job papers showing out? Yeah. Had 2 interviews with accounting firms, one at the Army, and I had no idea what an accountant did. In fact, I remember clearly before...
Do you still have any idea what they do?
Not really, no.
Don't really do much accounting these days.
I remember clearly in the library in Lee, just before the first interview, actually reading up on what an accountant does and then just regurgitating it in the interview and acting as if I was like every other person who goes for an interview at an accounting firm, in the, it's what I'd always wanted to be since the age of 12 and I'd studied towards it and so on. Anyway, got the job and fell into accountancy, which was, it's been a blessing, but also was really challenging because I am the world's worst accountant. And I say that quite openly, in the risk of being disciplined by professional bodies and so on. But unfortunately, the detail number work really wasn't for me.
Right. Okay.
But what I enjoyed doing was going out and meeting people. So I made any excuse to get out of the office, meet people, and just ask them a simple question about why they do what they do. And what I found was, before long, I knew more about their business than they did before I asked them the questions. But it was one of these things, but it just opened my eyes to the fact that a lot of business owners didn't actually really know much about business. They were accidental business owners, much like I was an accidental accountant, and like most people just fall into what they're doing rather than deliberately do it. Anyway, fast forward to 2014, I think it was. So by that point, I'd bought out the firm and had gone from being... I guess the accounts junior who wasn't very good and was quite disruptive, training businesses on how to computerise their accounts. 2002, I bought over online accounting. So we were the first firm to properly do online accounting. 2007, bought over a package called Zero, which is now one of the leading ones.
You use it outstanding brand, mate.
That's it.
We
I went through.
changed from Sage to Zero.
Yeah, sorry.
We changed from Sage to Zero.
Have you?
Yeah.
And I went through the stage of going from sort of training to being a consultant to selling, because I noticed I was naturally able to win clients, to leading a sales team, to leading a marketing team, and kind of went through that personal journey. Anyway, 2014, somebody on my Facebook posted, does anybody know anybody who could write a book on startups? And it was always a bucket list item of mine to write a book of some shape or form, but I thought it would be about franchising, which was the industry I was focused on at the time. So anyway, I waved, said, look, I'm halfway through a book, which I wasn't. And I didn't realise the gravity of that message and the decision that I'd made, because before I knew it, I was offered a book contract from Hodder and Stoughton, who are the world's second biggest publisher. Wow. And it was like, wow. So I guess, I mean, you touched on how did I build the following and so on. I kind of did it in reverse, because most people try to build a following and then write a book and then get a contract and so on. And I actually landed a contract before I'd written the book and before I knew what I was doing.
Why do you think that is, though? Why do you think you got a contract? Because people are after contracts from publishers all the time. Why did you do it? Why did you get a contract?
So I don't know, to be honest. I think that it was a combination of, I was okay at writing. I could string together a few sentences, and for writing, the quality was okay, but also I had a very strong underlying belief of where most business books go wrong, in that most of them try to overcomplicate subjects with the intention of selling a solution at the end of it. And my view has always been just to say things in plain English, because business really ain't difficult. It's I know enough, with all respect to them, I know enough stupid people who've done really well for themselves to know that it's not actually about what's between the ears. It is to do with what's between the ears, but not academically. It's more about resilience and persistence and consistency and so on, than intellectual ability and being able to do complicated equations and so on. But the business world tries to persuade you otherwise. Yeah. So I wrote the first book, and I had all of about 900 social media followers at the time. And then I guess the tipping point was that, unfortunately, I lost access to my kids in 2016, 2017, I think it was. So January 2016. And
that must have been tough for you. It must have been a tough time.
It was. And one of the things that I did, so it was a dreadful time. But one of the things I did was I decided at that point that I wanted to create a legacy for all of my kids, so that if they typed my name into Google, they would find me, basically.
Okay.
So that was one of
the genuinely. You don't bullshit me. Genuinely, that's why you did it.
Yeah.
We haven't talked about what we're going to talk about. Do you mind talking about this? Because I know you know what I'm going through. 11 months I've not seen my daughters. Sure. It's a subject that most people don't talk about. And I never knew that. I never knew that's the reason why you did it. And I'm just a little bit blown away and a bit shocked.
So that's one of them. Look, I think that for anyone looking to build a personal brand, you need a combination of reasons. Yeah. So you need to have a commercial benefit at the end of it, because otherwise you're just pissing in the wind, and
it's very egotistical as well, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? It's very egotistical.
Well, that's the next one. So you need a commercial reason, but you need an ego as well, because commercially there's probably a whole lot easier way to get to the end goal than building a personal brand. So there's an ego box, there's the business box, but then there also, I strongly believe there has to be something inside you that pushes you to keep going, because it's a really slow process. And I actually ramped it up quite quickly compared to many, but I think you need a strong light to work towards, to keep going.
Go back to the kids and that burning desire. Look, I'm a salesperson. So when I look for salespeople, I've identified the best salespeople have a want and a need. You know, whether that's they're getting married, they need to pay for it. They want to buy a house. They're not supported by someone. And when you've got that, you don't have to be a great salesperson. You have a desire. You have that burning thing. When it happened, and you went through the process of getting divorced, and obviously fighting for your children, and 4 years later you've still not seen your children. I know you've got a son now with your partner Sarah. 4 years on, do you think to yourself, with the books you've written, the content you put out there, still the same thing? Hopefully we'll walk into Waterstones and pick up that book, or is that my dad? And I know that they're cool with you and that they want to see you.
So it's I mean the journey, and I think it's I don't want to dwell on it too much. So I split with Hayley about 8 years ago now. So just over 8 years. And what happened was, it was when my new wife Sarah fell pregnant, and we told her that, look, you might want to warn the kids, but they can see a big belly and this is what it is. And that was the point that the access was cut. So so the kids saw a little bit of a journey. So they saw the first book, and I remember clearly them going into a bookshop in Oxford and asking if I remember Lauren asking the lady behind the counter if they had my book. And when she said, I'll need to check on the computer, it's like, what, don't you know? What kind of bookshop is it?
Oh, brilliant.
But anyway, I think that what happened, so that was the catalyst, and yeah, it's still there. But when it comes to, I guess, everything that I do, you always have to fall back to what your paradigms, what your beliefs, and what you're trying to achieve. And I mentioned that it was for all of my kids. So I guess the evolution of where my message has gone has been, my eldest son Jordan has started his own business. And
what's he doing? Let's plug Jordan's business. We've got a few followers.
He's a voiceover artist.
Voiceover. So basically, anyone that needs any voiceover, he must have. Honestly, he must have learned that from you. He must have a Twitter, Insta, Facebook. I mean, let's give him some love.
Yeah. So with him, for example, he was being forced down the academic route at school. And at the time, he was about 15, 16, wasn't doing so well, got persuaded to go into A-levels, and he came out of his A-levels with a couple of Fs, basically.
Me too.
But in the nicest possible way. There was no point him spending that 2 years doing A-levels. He might as well have left at 16. He was then being persuaded to go to university. And the problem is, I mean, Jordan is a great guy, but he's very much like me. He's not really focused on the academic side. That doesn't interest him. But society was trying to tell him, Jordan, you've got to be a coder. Jordan, you've got to do this, you've got to do that. And he started his business. And I saw that a lot of my content was almost a letter to Jordan telling him that he was able to start his own business and do his own thing. So yeah, I always try to look at what I do as being guidance for my kids, and so that they can look at it and have something to be proud of, but also something that can steer them in the right direction. So yeah, when I lost access, I decided at that point that I was going to just set myself a little target of having one media interview per day. So that was January 16, and I didn't care what the media was. It was
that's quite a punchy target, Carl. It
was huge, but that could have been a blogger. It could have been the Daily Mail. It could have been anyone.
Yeah, okay, but it's still don't downplay it.
That was the goal. But I watched a Gary Vaynerchuk video over that Christmas break, and another lady, Sarah Cordiner, just to hear what they had to say about personal branding. And something Gary Vaynerchuk. Now, I'm not a big fan of Gary V, because I think
why not?
I think he can introduce some unhealthy habits in people looking to grow in terms of the hustle culture. And I saw Jordan get sucked into that, thinking he's got to go out at 4 a.m. and video his walk to the gym and so on.
Right.
So I'm not a big fan of that because I don't think that's sustainable for
Because you're
anyone.
normally coming in at 4 a.m. for start, Carl. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. But look, he had a saying that an audience of one is better than an audience of none.
Right.
So my thinking was that if I get 30 interviews across January, it doesn't matter whether it's to one person, to 10 people, to 100 people. If I can amplify, let's say there's an average of 50 people see each article, do 30 of them, then that's a good bit of reach. And within that month, I got 5 bits of national press coverage, which was like, wow. And I
Did you have a
really,
PR company, Carl? Did you have a PR company? Did you
not at
go out
that
and do
point,
that yourself?
not at that point. That was all done myself. So what I did was on Twitter, I was searching the hashtag journo request. On in the evenings, I was going to meet the journalist events and just meeting journalists.
Right.
Really simple stuff. But I was
But
just
you put the
getting.
legwork in.
This is it. Within 3 months, I had to appoint a PR company because of the volume of leads coming in. Within 6 months, I had to then build a content team. And it just started going from there. And that was the start of the journey, really.
But okay, where are we now? You know, Insta followers, Facebook. You've got groups. You've now written how many books? You know, tell us where Carl Reed. Your CV today is what?
So where am I today? So from a personal branding perspective, social media is about 150K across all platforms. So very broadly, that's about 74K on Twitter. So we'll say, if we say 75 there, just to make sure my maths easy.
Yeah.
75 there, 32 on LinkedIn, 35 maybe on Insta, about 10 on Facebook, 2 in the group. That probably comes up to about 150, I think.
Yeah. And none of them are paid for, Carl. None of them are paid for. You're not paying for your
No, never buy followers. Never buy them. I will come on to that bit in a minute. But yeah, so I've got that. In terms of my businesses, so I'm chairman at D&T, so I'm not actively involved in there in any of the day-to-day. Up until a couple of months ago.
And that's Dennis and Turnbull. We've had this conversation. Carl never uses his platforms to push his businesses.
Completely. So look, I subscribe to, again, the Gary Vaynerchuk jab, 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 right hook. But actually, I take it a step further and I see the activity that I do is very top of funnel. So my aim is to get, let's say 1 million eyeballs on me, so that then there might be 50,000 who are interested enough to dig a little bit deeper, go onto my website or read my book or whatever. And then from there, they will, if they look hard enough, they'll be able to find my businesses. And then of those 50,000, 10,000 might be potential buyers. You know what, if you've got an accounting firm with 10,000 or, I'm involved as a brand ambassador for a fintech company, Practice Ignition, if they get 10,000 customers, any of those, it totally makes the business.
You've also not told them about your influence in the football club now. Do you know what I mean? If they had 10,000 fans turn up.
Oh, one day. But yeah, so in terms of what I do, so that's social media stuff. I've written for every national newspaper, so if I've been quoted or written a column or whatever, apart from Sunday Sport, been on every team.
Oh, Carl, you are prime for writing for the Sunday Sport.
I know I am. I know some of the stories.
Give us a headline, Carl.
Some of the headline.
Got to be an accountancy-based one as well, because obviously let's keep it real.
Oh, jeez. Do you know what? I'm not about creative today, but some of the headlines. So when I do my talks, I talk internationally, and I was delivering a talk in Silicon Valley in November, and I wanted to use my been in every paper apart from the Sunday Sport line because it always gets a bit of a laugh. But I actually had to make notes of some of the headlines. So I never normally use notes when I'm speaking, but I had to have a little note card. So when I said this, I could say, here are some of the headlines. And they didn't go down too well because the Americans weren't too keen about sticking whatsits in certain places.
Well, do you know what? Do you know the funny thing is, I've sent Sarah, our CEO, my partner, one the other day, and it was about sticking Quality Street. Basically, I'm trying to find it, because it was basically sticking Quality Street up your backside. And he'd done it as an advent calendar. 24 Quality Street up your backside. And it was I've got to find it. Yeah, and you're right. They don't get stuff like that in the US, do they?
No, it was yeah. So that one didn't translate too well, but yeah,
But
in
yeah, so
terms of book,
you've written for all of the nationals.
yeah. So the books I've written: Startup Coach and the Franchising Handbook, Boss
And how
It.
did they go? How did they go?
So they went okay. What I learned very quickly, and we spoke a bit about the publishing process before. Obviously, you've got two ways of going. You can either be self-published or traditionally published.
Yeah.
And traditionally published, I presumed that meant straight away that I'd be put on the WH Smith shelves and all of that stuff. And it doesn't mean that at all.
Right.
So what you probably aren't aware of is, do you know what you need to do to become a New York Times bestseller?
No, go
$50,000.
on.
Simple as that. WH Smith, Business Book of the Week. It's somewhere between £2,000 and £15,000. £15,000 being a window display, £2,000 being listed. That's the reality of how the book world works. So
you're buying your place.
yeah, you buy your place. So people presume that publishers will actively promote a book, but they won't. What I didn't realise was I had to promote it myself. And I did a half job of promoting it, but I was kind of laying back waiting for the publishers to do it. There was also a bit of a cock-up. There was a typo on the spine of my first book. So they all got pulled and got burned and had to be re-released. So that was the first one. Second one was a very niche market. This one is... So this one's a headline book, not a series book. So that makes a bit of a difference. And it's for global release. So it's released 3rd of October in the UK, 27th of October, US and internationally.
And what's it called?
Boss It. And it's all about helping people control their time, income and life. And I guess that this might be the time for me to do it properly, because it's always a learning journey of how to promote them, how to build pre-orders and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And how are you going about that? What are you doing?
Well, where do I start? Obviously, what's gone on in the world recently has been a massive distraction. So there was a risk of the deadlines being pushed back, but most of the supply chain in the publishing process have been furloughed. So it's going to be interesting to see how we promote it. I think that for me, it's going to be a combination of social media activity. It's going to be through the social media group, in particular, Boss It. So we've set up a small business community on Facebook. We've grown it in a couple of weeks to 2,200 members. And
people are really responding to it as well, aren't they?
Yeah, so I think we got 130 new members yesterday. So that's going quite nicely and getting a bit of traction. So that will be a core group to build content around the book. So hopefully there's a natural desire for group members to then want the book for another way to consume the information. But yeah, I'll be looking at social media marketing, email marketing, hammering the PR again. I took my foot off the pedal for a little while, but absolutely hammering it and just basically spreading the word that you can either pay £1,000 to a so-called expert, or you can pay 15 quid for a book.
And you say this quite a lot, don't you? You know, the $79, $98, $149 to learn how to become a millionaire.
It's scandalous.
You're very much about learn to do it yourself. Don't fall into the trap of
completely
pyramid schemes that just.
Because I was looking at this kind of stuff years ago, and I remember speaking to a good friend. We were talking about Jay Abrahams and I can't think of the other names of them at the time, but the first batch of internet marketers. And basically he said the problem with this, and he was very perceptive, see it very early on, is that they're teaching you to feed the masses and they're teaching you to sell to the masses, but actually we are the masses. But there's only a small group of people who are interested in buying internet marketing courses. And normally they're just teaching you how to sell internet marketing courses onto the next batch. There's only so many layers that you can go.
Yeah.
I attended one of these courses last weekend, and it was an American one. It was done online. I was invited along to it, very kindly by the person who invited me. However, it was just shocking. I was seeing in the Facebook community but people who hadn't been given a free invite, but people who had paid $2,000 to be on this course. It was a 3-day sales pitch. And they believe there's huge value. You know, day one was about building your customer avatar. 8 hours.
Oh my God.
How do you spend 8 hours telling someone how to build a customer avatar?
I assume you didn't stay 8 hours listening.
No. But, you know, for me, that's 5 pages of a book, maximum. Anyway, 8 hours on how to build a customer avatar, then 8 hours on, I can't remember the next, but I really tuned out after that bit. I was quite disgusted by it. Anyway, in the Facebook group, they were all talking about how wonderful it was. And it was like, what the hell? But then the whole sales pitch was focused on selling a $15,000 course, right? And the people in this Facebook group were debating that they'd spent their savings on the first course. Husband, because typically, you know, I'm not trying to be ageist or sexist, but this course was being run by a middle-aged man, and it was attracting a certain demographic of middle-aged females. And husbands were typically furloughed and out of work, and obviously in the States they're not being paid if they're furloughed. So husbands were furloughed, and these ladies were considering putting it on a credit card. $15,000 for what really should be a 50-page book. And it's just, yeah, that just emphasized to me why I do what I do. Because look, I think in business, a lot of people have a vested interest to overcomplicate stuff and package it up, sell the pain. You know, Andy, I can take that pain away from you. It's just going to cost you £1,000, for example. The reality is that often you're just, one might work, and that'll be the testimonial, but 99 won't work. And it's just scandalous when it could be in a book in plain English, not trying to sell anything. And, you know, I don't know if you've ever seen how much I make on my books.
I've got a friend of mine, Scott Addington, again, a great guy. He's a customer of mine, author. He's told me very, very little.
Yeah, so Franchising Handbook, Startup Coach are both on Kindle at £3.99 now, which means I make 39p at best.
Yeah. As I say, he said to me like 15p, 20p, 25p. Yeah. I'm like, you what? And even the books in the shops, you know, he gets £1 or something. W.H. Smith's gets like $7.99.
That's it.
How's that work?
Yeah, so I would get if it's ever gets sold at retail price in a shop, I would get between £1.20 and £1.49. It's 10%. That's just how.
So you're not living that champagne lifestyle off of the book.
No, so you can never make money out of writing books. So my advances were £2,000 each, and any
new pair of shoes for you.
Sorry,
new pair of shoes for you.
Exactly. The problem is there are people selling courses on how to write books, and they're saying that they've had 6-figure advances. You know, I've been sat in the room where 2 quite well-known business authors. One of them said he was offered 250,000. So then the lady then replied, well, I was offered £500,000. And I was sat there thinking, I know how much Alan Sugar was offered.
Right.
I know Jacob Rees-Mogg got £10,000 when he was probably one of the most well-known people in UK politics.
So just utter BS.
Yeah, complete rubbish. Every business author I know has had a very similar advance to me, apart from 2, right. One of whom is a very well-known journalist, and the only way they got it increased from £2,000 was by going back to the publisher saying, this is my per word rate for the Telegraph, and
right, okay,
and going that way, and going with some knowledge. But you know, there isn't money to be made in business books. So one of the big problems with business books is they're often used as the first step in a quite aggressive sales process as well. So an interesting one is Mike Winnett. I don't know if you come across Mike Winnett on LinkedIn.
I listened to your chat. Again, something we haven't spoken about is your podcast as well.
Yeah. So in the Facebook group, we're starting a business book club. And part of that is to expose the nonsense around bestseller books and so on.
Yeah.
I've invited Mike as the first guest because Mike managed to get an Amazon bestseller.
Was he the Million Beer Man? Was that someone else?
Mike Southend, that is. Yeah, so that's
sorry.
Mike Southend, being that entrepreneur. Mike Winnett, so he's a guy built a startup, really successful, sold it for a few million, had nothing better to do apart from expose scams. And one of the scams that he saw was that you can get a book as bestseller on Amazon by listing it in a completely irrelevant topic and getting free sales. So he published a blank book.
No.
Yeah, so he published a blank book called How to Become an Amazon Bestseller. And pretty much the steps were listed on the back cover. And
so no one checks. No one checks what
no one checked at all. There's no quality control on it. So yeah, we've got him as our first business book club guest.
Wow. I'm going to become an author now. By this afternoon, I'm going to have a book on Amazon.
Honestly, by this afternoon, all you need to do, because ebooks now, you don't even need to have it physically printed. You just need to buy an ISBN number, list it in some random category that no one's going to go searching in. Biographies of Colchester United fans, for example. Sell it to 3 people, and at 99p each, and job done. You're a bestseller.
Lovely. Honestly, we'll see what happens in 24 hours. You may see my LinkedIn profile change to author and Amazon #1 bestseller. Because look, I love that story, and I think to myself, let's give that a go.
But look, I think with all of these things, so podcasts, books, articles, all of that stuff, I see it as a marketing web.
Yeah.
So it all kind of, if you imagine like a spider's web, and if it's a bad spider web, nothing's going to get caught in it.
No.
But if you can attack your marketing from several different angles, it kind of goes like this, and then it becomes very sticky. And
because you've even got people that are fakers trying to be car reading, copying your profiles. That's how big it's got, isn't it?
And it can be quite scary. So I read a really good article from Tim Ferriss. Now, Tim is a proper internet sensation. I feel
you're an internet sensation, Carl.
What could you say about me? But Tim gets all sorts of things come through. He gets suicide notes, and he gets all kind of nutters writing to him.
Wow.
Now, I can't promise that I get the same level in any way, shape, or form. But
have you had a death threat?
Yes.
And mate, with the family and your boy and your wife.
So I've had that. I've had on a typical day, I probably get, gonna guess, 50 unsolicited messages, and all sorts, mostly begging or but all sorts.
Where'd you sit on that the trolling? You're putting yourself out there. Do you deserve to be death threatened? Do you deserve to be derived as a nutcase, a paedophile, or anything? I can tell. I can go online and say, "Carl Reader, you're X, Y, Z." Where do you sit on that?
So the first thing I'll say is that Twitter now does a very good job of blocking it. So I don't actually see it on Twitter. So, for example, if I put something on, I could see there's 20 comments, but I might only see 18 of them. That means that the 2 that they've blocked, probably I don't want to see.
Right.
So I would only see things if they go into direct messages and I actually look into them. I think for me, it comes with the territory. I think that, my view is that there's good and bad, and the benefit that I get from having built a platform, business, personal, and ego. I mentioned about those 3 things.
Yeah.
If ever the downsides outweighed it, I'll just delete my social media accounts. It's really simple. But I also fully acknowledge, you've got to look at Caroline Flack, for example, and it can, if you're not in a position where you can see through it and see it for what it is, it can be really damaging.
It's just been Mental Health Awareness Week. It's just an interesting thing having you on.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, I guess because I can be a bit of an arsehole online as well to people. I certainly have been in the past. So, I've been that teenager back when it used to be, chat rooms and MySpace, calling people all names under the sun. So because I've been there, I know that it's just keystrokes on a keyboard, first of all. But if ever it got beyond that, then I'd just delete and walk away.
Does it ever affect you up here though? Or is it just water off the duck's back?
I don't think so. It affects Sarah more than it affects me.
Okay.
So yeah, but there's a few things. So first of all, there's any abuse, but there's also people being over familiar, because there is, and I'm certainly not moaning about this, but if you can imagine, if you've got an audience of 150,000, obviously you mentioned about bought ones. Now, I don't buy followers because they impact your engagement, which then basically decimates your reach. But what happens naturally is you do most profiles, if they've grown beyond friends and family, have very broadly 10% inactive accounts, which could be bots, could be people who aren't using it anymore, and so on. So you need to take them off. You need to take off duplicated accounts as well, because Andy, I don't know for certain, but you're probably on my LinkedIn, on my Facebook, on my Twitter. That's triple counting. But you bring it down. Let's say you halve it down to 75,000. Of those 75,000, those that see me in their newsfeed will feel like they know me. Let's say it's 10% of them, 7,500, but I won't know them. And one of the real challenges, and it can get quite embarrassing, is over familiarity, where because you've put it all out, they feel like they know you, but it's a one-way relationship.
Yeah.
And that it sounds like a great problem to have, but it's really not, because
Has it gone as far as stalker status?
no.
Right, anyone out there that fancies being Carl's first stalker, he's looking for one. He needs that on his CV. And that's a joke, by the way. Anyone goes after him. Something you don't know, Carl knows football hooligans. Don't you, Carl?
Well, let's chat about that the better.
Just make it right. I said you know. I said I didn't say you get involved.
Yeah, look. Anyway, back to the people.
Is that over familiar?
Yes. So the challenge with the over familiarity is it can get really awkward at, let's say, networking events and so on, where you know, if you bump into someone after I do a talk, whatever, they come up to you and almost get embarrassed that you don't know who they are.
Right.
But the reality is they've not been putting content out, so they've not actually come onto my radar.
Right. Okay. Yeah. We funny enough, we had it. We would talk for Common Skew in America, yearly trade show, PPAI, and we've past few years done a talk, speaker slot. We're not speakers, but just on our journey. And both years we've come off, certainly the second year even more than first. And that whole thing of people, I get embarrassed, by the way. I mean, I'm very outgoing, but I don't really take compliments very, very well. I get very embarrassed, and it was just very scary. And so that was just on our small little scale. So on a larger scale, when you've got 155, 50,000, 75, 7,500, those people, and you put out content quite a lot. So you're very much a good speaker. You talk about life. So they must really think that I'm Carl's friend.
Yeah, and it just becomes it can become a little unsettling when and I'm certainly not complaining about it at all, because it's lovely that people care, but I think it's just, from my perspective, it can be a bit of a, how do you know that? And it puts you in a bit of a strange position when you're speaking to someone, which, like you and I, we'll be able to sit down and talk about Southend, for example, and we're on the same wavelength with it. We'll have a catch up and so on. But if somebody who I've not told them that that's my team, and they don't know me, but then they say, "Oh, you went to football last week," based on an Instagram story, it takes that split second to realise how they knew about it.
Yeah, you've been checking.
Yeah, and they're clearly not stalkers. That's the thing. They just obviously something that resonated with them. But in that split second, you think, "Oh my God, are you watching my every move? Have you got a CCTV camera in my house?"
Yeah. And how do you feel about that? How do you generally respond to someone that does that? Because also you do going back to the personal brand, and you want to sell books. It's not like, for instance, you can push them away. So how do you deal with that?
So I just try to remind myself at all times how they've come across that information, and that's the key is to remember that they're not your friend. Whilst they might take an interest in what you're doing, they aren't your friend, and they are just taking an interest, which is which is actually right, but there is a risk as the individual of taking it either, oh my God, they're stalking me, or oh my God, this is my new best friend. And it's not either of those. But then, yeah, it's about learning, I guess from my side, learning to manage that and make the relationships that I have with people based on that as authentic as possible as well. One of the things
does it make you more susceptible to distrust of people?
Not really, but I imagine if it ramped up, it possibly could. So I could see how that could happen. What it does do, though, is it makes me careful about what I share.
Right.
So I think there's, if we go back to one of the big mistakes people make with this so-called personal branding and so on, they project an image of themselves that isn't congruent with their real life.
I've just written it down, and I'm so glad, because again, I wanted to touch on the tattoos,
Yeah.
the shade there, the who you are. You're very, very genuine. You're authentic. You've not tried to hide behind a suit and tie.
So you've got a few who will hide behind suit and tie and take the LinkedIn approach.
Yeah.
You've got a few who will take the Instagram approach of always taking selfies filtered to the max next to a Lamborghini. Now, the reality for both of them is that when they meet someone in the real world, it's like, is that it? Because we are all, we're both wearing white t-shirts. That's who we are.
Yeah.
So I made a very real commitment to myself that everything that goes online has to be authentic. However, it doesn't have to be complete. So there's a good proportion that I don't actually share. So, for example, I don't share a lot about my kids.
No.
I've seen some influencers, particularly around sort of like health and fitness space and so on, where they've their kids have started showing, not them.
Yeah, I know.
The kids can't choose it.
No, I saw this the other day. I think it might have been Joe. If it weren't, I weren't doing it. You can see, but a kid came in the shot and then started interacting. I was like, exactly that. Same with religion. I'm an atheist, but I would never push a child down a religion, because how can they choose? It's exactly that. Of how can you, my personal profiles. 11 months ago, I used to share pictures of my girls because I know the group of people that I'm in.
Yes.
But I don't use them for my business. And
no, exactly. So there's that, but then there's also other stuff as well. There's certain moments where you want to be in the moment rather than taking pictures.
Yeah.
So I try not to. There are some things where it's almost staged. So almost certainly, if I'm going to see Southend, there'll be a picture of the back of the West Stand. That's almost certainly going to happen. What there won't be is a picture of me with my lad in the spread. That's the moment that we're sharing, where we're having a couple of pints, just having a good chat. And why would I pull my phone up to record that?
Yeah.
So I do control what goes on, but it's still congruent and authentic with who I am, if that makes sense.
It does indeed, but again, I know we're flipping all over the place, but you're such I told you before, I didn't want this just to be a normal business, here's Carl Reed, he's going to give you advice on this, that and the other. To get inside Carl Reed, but more importantly, what you've achieved as far as 0 to 150,000, you're not like a Kardashian with 33 million, but 150,000 followers, the books, you influence, people want you to talk. They want your input. They want your knowledge. The fact that you won't charge to download a white paper that people could learn themselves. It makes you very authentic, and this is why I wanted today about Carl Reader, really, because you do a lot of the interview. You do a lot of the talking but about business, but people don't understand what you've done to get it. Why? So I didn't realise, the one of the influences was you're not seeing your children and having that ability to search Carl Reader and you come up. Not that all the other Carl Readers out there. Sorry, Carl's making a bit bigger effort. We should actually do that. Here's a question: do you search Carl Reader on the internet?
So I have a Google search alert on it. So
who are the other Carl Readers?
There are. So there is a journalist who's based in Basingstoke, and there's a swimming instructor.
Okay, so are they both of them competing for your top spot?
They won't get there, will they?
Never, never, ever,
There's
ever.
also,
And there's the ego. There's the ego.
Funnily enough, there is a guy called Carl Reeder who is based in Southend, which obviously is it's our hometown, and he's got carlreeder.co.uk. So I've got .com, and that was really surreal that somebody from the same hometown, the same
Have you
name.
tried buying it? Have you tried buying it?
I haven't, no.
Surprises me. I thought you'd push the competition out.
I should do, shouldn't I? I should squeeze out the coal competition. But yeah, look, it's luckily my name is fairly unique. I've managed to capture the @Carl Reeder handles on most of the sites. Most of them have got verified as well now. So it's
and then there you go. There's a business tip for you. Get out there. You know, if you're looking for personal brand, go and make sure that happens. Go and make sure your URLs are sorted.
Definitely get the URLs. Get a consistent social media handle is key. But also I think that even if you've got the same name as someone else, it really doesn't matter.
No.
You know, if you look at, I'm trying to think of a good example, Michael Jordan, and is it Michael B. Jordan?
Yep.
You know, you can be, there's space for more than one of each. There's space for another Andy Thorne because people will know you and it's not just your name.
No, everyone thinks I'm a footballer.
A good footballer.
A footballer. Right. Look, this is even people don't even realise that even I had to fill out your calendar request to get time with you. Do you know what I mean? It's like honestly, the man is busy as hell. A lot of what you don't see is what Carl does outside of this. He's working with Hungerford Town. Is it Hungerford?
Yeah, so I'm actually sidestepping away from that at the moment. But yeah, I do quite a few bits. So I serve as brand ambassador for a few brands actually. Yeah, I don't tend to talk so openly about the brands that I'm working with, but I make full disclosure when I'm working with them. One of them is well, have a look on my website under the influence section. You'll see the details of the businesses that I'm working with.
But that's what I'm saying. You're a busy man. You know, it's to be Carl Reeder, you get pulled from pillar to post. You have deadlines. You don't have 9 to 5. You know, you have to have a calendar that people dip into because you can't.
Do you know that's another thing about personal branding? And don't worry, Andy, I did clear out loads of time for this. So
basically, you get an half-hour slot with Carl, and I'm like, fuck off. Do you mean I'm not having half hour? Do you mean I'm not falling into your timescales?
You got me all afternoon, mate. But in terms of personal branding, one of the very big challenges that I didn't expect is it really does encourage the blurring of your work and life.
Right.
So Facebook doesn't switch off at 5 p.m. on a Friday, does it?
No.
And particularly when you're managing a community and people. I don't know if they expect me to be present, but I think that I like to think it adds something to it if I am present.
Yeah. Well, no one wants to go to a Michelin star restaurant and be served by the head chef of the day. Do you know what I mean? Everyone expects that chef to be there. Generally, they're not. But
maybe. But that means 5 p.m. on a Sunday as well as 7:30 in the morning on the Monday.
Yeah. That's like just an all-nighter for you, isn't it? I mean, party in between. Get up and
This is it.
Right. I know you are busy. So what I want to know a bit about Carl Reeder. What motivates you, Carl?
What motivates me? Really good question. And I'm just trying to think how best to answer this. Look, I'm very much focused on external validation rather than internal. So I like a nice round of applause rather than giving myself a round of applause. Most people are, to be fair. I would guess 95% of people are. If they
how do you think football's going to cope with behind closed doors? How do you think football's going to close? Biggest egos on the planet. How are they going to get up for a game that the name's not being chanted? They're not being sung to. They're not. Score a goal.
I think you'll see. I don't know how much access we're going to have to football over the next few weeks, but I think that there'll be some new stars of the show because They say that it's what you do behind closed doors that makes or breaks you, and it'll be interesting to see how that translates to the competition.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of people are externally validated. I would like to say I'm not motivated by money, but I clearly am. Most people are.
Yeah. But it's not your driver, though, is it?
It's not the key driver.
It's choice. It's your choice.
The key driver is making a difference.
Yeah.
The key driver is, if I think back to my business studies at GCSE, and I was being taught about the 700 biggest companies in the UK, and that was it. I was being taught about how to do complex share valuation calculations.
Right.
Now, the reality...
We ain't going down that road, anyone, just before you
No.
start, because that just, honestly, I nearly fell asleep when you just said it.
No, but the reality of business is you find something for a £5 and sell it for a tenner.
Yep.
And that's all business is. Whatever level you are, when you come down to fundamentals, find something that costs you a £5, sell it for a tenner, and do it a few times.
Yeah, make a profit.
The ridiculous thing was that in business studies, they didn't teach you that very basics. They dive into at GCSE. They dive into some of the really complicated stuff about PLCs, but actually, business is really simple. It's hard work, but it's simple. And if you take any business, if you look at some of the most complicated businesses in the world, like Amazon, for example, it's a trading business. Its job is to buy stock and sell it.
Yeah.
That's it. And yes, there's complicated stuff around it, but fundamentally, Amazon is a simple business. With driver number one being capture market share. Once they've done that, driver number two, tweak profitability. Add a percentage onto your net profit, and everyone's laughing. That's Amazon's game plan, and that's really simple. But if you were to ask an expert, they would overcomplicate it. And I think that in business we have the solution looking for problems. So that's the driver. It's just about clearing stuff up and helping people and making them realise how simple it is.
And do you think you're achieving that?
I'd like to hope so. Now, the challenge of this is it's really hard to monitor and to manage the resonance of a message and the reach of a message. I did set a goal that I wanted to influence 1 million people. That was probably the most ridiculous goal, because how could you ever track it? I could argue that my columns in The Sun would have influenced 1 million people because of their readership levels. I could argue that I've done it, but actually there's no way of knowing whether I've truly influenced them, if I've managed to make a change in their life or not.
Okay, here's a question for you then, Carl. Do you ever feel successful? Let's say, for instance, you take that example, your column in The Sun has influenced 1 million people, and that's verified. Are you happy with that? Are you ever happy? There's a question. Are you ever happy?
There's always something else. So look, for every one thing that's come off, there's been 10 things that haven't. And again, that's the other bit that people don't see. So a good example of that was I was contracted to do a TV show. In fact, I was contracted to do 2 TV shows, one in small business, one in personal finance. The one in small business got quite far. But, that didn't happen, which was a shame. And there's a lot of people who've had the same. I see it. I see a lot of my friends who are doing similar in terms of building profile and so on. And they'll make the announcement that they've got a contract and it's gone through the commissioners and so on. And it's like, you've done 10% of the work, mate. Let's wait till it's on ITV. There's a lot of stuff that I would like to do that hasn't happened yet. Now, will it happen? I don't know. Will I feel like I've achieved success when I've done it? I don't know. So, for example,
you've been successful today. You can argue you've been successful today.
I've done all right. The reality of success is I wake up every morning and can choose what I do. So, whilst I am busy, I also have the choice of every single thing in my diet. I'm not forced to do anything. It's a choice. Secondly, we can put food on the table. We've got our health. That's clearly success. So from that perspective, yes, I guess I am.
But you're not satisfied with that.
there's always more jets, isn't there? One day, I might have a 10% share in one.
One day you might buy Ron Martin out and be the owner of Southend United.
Well, so having dabbled in football, that was one of the end goals. Having seen and experienced the other side of a table, I empathise with Ron Martin now, and I never thought I'd say that.
Wow. So there's a revelation.
I actually refused to have a meeting with him. When was it? 4 years ago in the boardroom, one of the clubs. Refused to have a meeting with him because you know my views on Ron Martin, or certainly you know my previous views, but football as a business, as a world, is absolutely screwed. And I sincerely hope that what this virus and lockdown does is rebalance everything. League One, League Two needs to go semi-pro.
Really?
But the reality is that even in Conference South, there are 4 or 5 professional clubs, which means they're paying their players full-time wages. And it's just not sustainable.
How are they surviving?
They're not. That's the thing. It's all the whole of the football world is a fragile deck of cards.
Right.
It's just it's waiting to go down. But yeah, look, if I was to look at success, I would love to. I'd love to have like almost in fact, a few different things. I want to do a personal development book that's aimed at normal blokes rather than. I think it's wrong that you go into a bookshop and all of the self-help books and the mindset training books are female-led and female-aimed. Because I think blokes really want something, but they're not going to read a pink book that's fluffy saying...
Honestly, mate. And do you know what? There's a guy become friends with on LinkedIn, and we've been chatting, Daniel Gray. He's actually the founder of War Paint for Men, men's makeup. He actually has a body dysmorphia. He has a mental health issue with it, and did say about it. He created War Paint for Men, and exactly that. There's you walk into John Lewis or Russell Fraser or any of those, the women's makeup is there. It's a taboo subject. He got a small little stand in John Lewis in Oxford Street, and it's exploded. Product's great. It's well packaged. He happily shows himself, and it's again, look, I haven't bothered today, but the dark circles around your eyes, or you're looking a bit pale, and you want to, if you don't mind actually doing a bit about, if we don't mind going to the gym, or we don't mind having, God forbid, a spray tan, then why not them other things? And you're absolutely spot on. There is a market for self-help in that regard.
Exactly. That's not American get rich quick guru kind of stuff. That's also not girl boss, you can do it. Yeah. Interestingly, I've had 2 publishing contracts turned down because I'm not female. Yeah, that's the stuff that doesn't normally get spoken about, but one of them was very clear and told me that 85% of their customer list is female and they will only read books by other females. The other one, which was a major publishing house, skirted around it, but made it very clear that they're looking for books on diversity through a diverse range of authors, and they've got quotas they need to meet. But I think that there's quite a few things that I would like to achieve. But you touched on the makeup thing. And another thing that amazed me, and I know this isn't a diversity chat, but glasses. Have you been to an optician trying to buy glasses?
No, not recently. I've got some contact lenses, but I used to do it all the time.
Yeah, so I had to change mine. So I'm contacts as well, but I always like to have a spare pair. Yeah. And there was one shelf for men, 10 shelves for women. And it amazes me that there is that discrepancy. So there's loads of stuff that I would.
And again, before everyone starts kicking off, Carl and myself are very much advocates of breaking through, women breaking through that glassing, because there is a split, and it's frustrating sometimes being a middle-aged white man that actually does support and push females in business in life and loves the idea of equality, but then you look at the flip side of that, and there is a whole host of stuff that men are Not,
Yeah, I think
not,
there's a different side to it, Andy. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. Diversity is a really good thing, and it's something that we all need to be mindful of.
yeah,
The challenge of this actually comes into a completely different area, a completely different topic, but diversity is so much more than race or gender.
yeah,
So it's something that in the accounting world, I particularly suffered from in the early days.
okay,
And I guess you could now argue that I'm taking advantage of in the same way that if, yeah, there's probably certain females and certain ethnic minorities who could say that they're taking advantage of it. And that's class. You know, in the accounting profession, if you're not middle class upwards, if you're not privately educated, you've got a problem.
right,
You got me, who's barely got any GCSEs to rub together, compared to those who've been through private school and university education. Um, so the question I have is, let's say you've got a panel of speakers. If you've got a nice blend of males and females and maybe a touch of ethnic minority to get your representative panel, but they all
and to
went
be PC, by the way, let's be
absolutely. But
honest.
let's say so you've ticked two of, let's say, 100 diversity boxes,
Yep,
but they all went to the same school,
yep,
had the same upbringing,
yep,
had the same type of career,
yep,
worked with the same kinds of customers,
yep,
served the same kinds of suppliers.
yep.
Are they going to bring a true diversity of opinion
No,
to the
no,
table?
of course they're not. Of course
And
they're not.
that's the challenge with diversity in general in business. I know we've gone off completely on a tangent here,
And this is what
but
I wanted, mate. I wanted it to be a chat, not again, a boring
yeah,
business.
but actually, I think diversity in business in general, you know, we touched on male makeup and it's kind of taken us here. It's something that for every business is really important that you don't do diversity to hit quotas,
No,
because that from the outset kind of sets out that, look, you've got to help out the little people here. Actually, you know, I grew up, I guess, at a really strange tipping point in the world where certainly from a gender perspective, not so much from a race perspective, but certainly gender, males and females were deemed to be equal. You know, so in my formative years, it was the mid 90s. You know, went to school 92 to 97, and it wasn't, you know, at that time, you wouldn't dream of a female being offered less pay.
no,
Yeah, that just wasn't, it wasn't even a thing. Whereas in my dad's generation, it probably was.
yeah,
But so I guess having come through that, I've come through a point where I've just naturally seen everyone as equal anyway.
yeah,
And it's actually, diversity is about truly living that, not just ticking a box to say you're living it.
yeah, yeah. And you see that, you know, you've seen that in the past. We've seen it in the past when we go for tenders. You know, people wanting to know certain questions so that they can tick their own boxes. Whereas now, people want authentic CSR and sustainability or social responsibility, or you know, that they actually are taking a vested interest and not just ticking a box. Oh yeah, you know, that company can say that they, you know, are X, Y, Z, and they conform to that. They actually want you to be involved. You know, one of our largest
Yeah.
clients, you know, from a diversity and sustain, they actually get us actively involved, which is great. You know, it shows. But they publish their targets online anyway, and so they have to stick to them. But they get us involved, and we learn a lot about diversity and sustainability because we're a relatively, you know, small company in that regard, especially compared to them. And it's great to actually see people like yourself actually think about writing a book in that, and companies actually taking not just box ticking exercises, actually doing it.
Yeah, because the thing that staggers me is that when I see companies saying, yeah, we've got a goal to make our board of directors, you know, 40% 40% of each gender and 20% floating for those who don't identify. For example,
Yeah,
all I read when I see that is a business that feels that it's got to shout about this and feels that it has to remind itself to be normal. What I mean by that is, why on earth would I, as an employer, exclude women or exclude certain races or exclude people who don't have a certain educational level?
yeah,
Because You know, why would I do? Why would I willingly cut out half the population?
Yeah,
You know,
crazy,
it
crazy.
just doesn't make sense.
No, you get the best person at the job.
Exactly. And yeah, to me, it just baffles me that I get that I'm not on, being, we touched on being sort of middle-aged white men. We're not on the other side of a table.
No,
So
no.
there's a piece of this that we might not see. But to me, it's like, why on earth doesn't everyone just live it? Rather than tick the box to say you've lived it, why don't you just live it?
Funny enough, Sarah, my partner, she's reading a great book, and it's about how things like the iPhone the design is for men to hold in their hands.
Okay.
So not direct discrimination, but there's a piece in the book about the Swedish government, a council in Sweden, and it was about when it was snowing. And what happened was there was a plan about how to deal when it snows. And what happens is the snowplow goes out, clears the roads. Then they clear the side roads. Yep. And finally they clear the pavements. And they actually looked and realised that there was more accidents happening on the pavements than there was on the roads. But the reason why they cleared the roads first was because obviously men drive to work. Most of the accidents were happening with women walking on pavements because the women were taking the kids or going, and they flipped it on its head and started clearing the pavements, and they realised they were spending more on their national health, looking after women who had slipped over, than they were with men driving in cars. And again, it was not the council and the government weren't looking at diversity and gender. They were just sorting the situation. But by focusing on the roads, ultimately they were prioritising the men. And it was, it just like when you hear that, it's like, no one was trying to do anything against women, but ultimately that's what happened. And it's like, you're right. We're not on the other side, so we don't see why does the iPhone not fit in my hand, because it does fit in my hand. The stuff like that we don't get to see, and I think, like I think to myself, surely there isn't this glass ceiling. Surely women can do what they want to do, because I'm power. We employ more women than we do men. I'm power women, and I get on better with women than I do men anyway. But it's not naivety, I don't think, from me. It's just, why would anyone do that? Why would anyone keep someone down?
Yeah, but I think your snowplow example is really good. I don't think anyone does it intentionally, but there is one of these challenges that I think the COVID situation is highlighting, actually, and it's moving away from diversity, is that we've all got our blinkers on. And our blinkers are formed based on our previous experience, the way we do our business and so on. The ones who are going to succeed after COVID, I think, are those who can take off the blinkers, move to the side, and have one eye on the blinkers to know what the competition's doing and one eye outside. I think those who completely take off the blinkers will just sort of go off on a tangent, and those who keep them on will struggle. This removal of the blinkers and trying to observe things very fairly, that's going to fix things like inherent discriminations and so on as well, because there is inherent discrimination. A great example, if we look at educational standards, is the amount of industries that require a university degree. Now, you and I know that the stuff we did at school, that there's a good proportion that you'd never use in real life.
No.
So why would you exclude people who've decided not to sit through another 5 years of nonsense they know they're not going to use?
I agree. But there's still a lot of companies out there that do it, and I don't understand. Bearing in mind everything you read is about recruiting for attitude, not aptitude. Do you mean it's like, well, if everyone says it, why don't everyone do it?
Yeah. So the problem with that, I mean, I'm a big advocate of that. We certainly made the mistake of hiring skills and firing on personality, and it's the challenge with the challenge with hiring on attitude is somebody needs to put their neck on the line and say, yes, I think this is, I think they're a good egg. I think they're going to do all right. I think they're going to fit in. And then when it all goes wrong, it's like, well, you said they were okay. Whereas when you hire on skills, you can set some arbitrary standards. So you can say, right, have they got A levels? Tick. Have they done this exam? Tick. Have they got this many years experience? Tick. And there's no subjectivity about it.
No.
So when it goes wrong, it's the candidate's fault, not the recruiter's fault. And I think that inbuilt fear of making a wrong decision is partly what drives the checklist-based approach.
Yeah. Right, Carl, I want you to finish today, and I could speak for hours and hours and hours. If you can leave everyone watching and everyone that's going to watch with something, whether it be personal, professional, just some words of wisdom of how to succeed, how to be better car reader, better analyst. Leave them with something. As I say, Mental Health Awareness Week. So positive thinking is why we've got to where we are. Just leave them with something.
Sure. So what I'm actually going to do is, because these people are far cleverer than me, my previous podcast guests, I always ask this question, and to save people listening through 60 episodes, I might as well summarise the common theme from pretty much everyone, which is to just do it.
Right.
Whatever it is you're trying to do, just get on with it. If you're planning to do it in 2 years, why don't you do it today? That certainly was the common theme across most people I interviewed. And there's not too much I can add to that. I think that for me, it would be to make sure, if I was to go into it a bit deeper and give my own spin on it, try to look objectively at what your limiting factors are. What barriers are you putting in the way? And work out, rather than work out why you can't do it, work out how you can do it. So that shift in mindset from going I can't afford to start my own business. I can't, I haven't got the time to go on this course. Rather than looking at reasons why you can't, look at how you can. How can I save up the £2,000 I need to buy my stock to get started?
Don't use that £2,000 to go on one of those silly training courses.
No, don't do that. How can I learn how to use WordPress so I can build my website and so on? And if you adopt that solutions-based mindset, it's amazing what can be done.
Brilliant. Carl, honestly, mate, it's been an absolute pleasure.
I've enjoyed it.
Busy boy. Let's finish with Southend United. I see yesterday that the EFL said that relegation is still happening. So it looks like we've gone down, mate.
Yeah, it's a tricky one because I actually agree with Andy over at Accrington. I don't know if you've seen Andy Holt at Accrington.
No.
Really good guy, worth following on Twitter to see his stream of consciousness. I'm very much aligned with his way of thinking on football. And of course, I would say this is a Southend supporter, but his view is that it's unfair to deny a team promotion. But it's also unfair to relegate a team. So the only logical conclusion, because the relegated teams have still got a chance to survive, and the promoted teams, whilst they might lose it, they should be promoted. So he believes the only way to do it is to have promotion but no relegation throughout, and load up the top with extra games.
Okay.
And I kind of subscribe to that view, but I appreciate people will quite rightly say that I've got a vested interest in that being the outcome, because it is unfair. You don't know whether could have got title winning form at the end of a season and survived by the skin of our teeth. You just don't know.
No.
So I do think it's unfair to relegate a team based on an incomplete season. But I don't think it's unfair.
Do you have the same feelings if we weren't second from bottom? Ultimately?
Probably. So, I mean, Accrington were fair mid-table, aren't they? So, yeah, in fact, it's a view based on fairness, but I know people will think that it's tinted based on Southend's position. Realistically, though, Southend have been absolutely shocking this season and fully expected relegation.
As of today, we deserve that down.
Yeah, and last season deserved to go down, let's be honest. It's a rebalancing that's needed. I think the club is going to struggle even more financially.
Yeah.
But that's just an indicator of how screwed football is. And I think it needs those in charge of the clubs to vote with their contracts and change the terms on the players. Unfortunately, I think that you can't have players in the fourth level of football earning 50, 60 grand a year as a professional.
Crazy.
Yeah, I know. At Hungerford, we were paying really good sums of money for what some people would have been able to. Some players would have been able to live on what they're being paid as a semi-pro.
Wow.
And when you think the average attendance is about 300, they're paying 12 quid a head in each at full price, but actually it's about 60% full, 40% concessions. Paying customers probably only about 150, 200. Then you've got to pay your referees and linesmen 300 quid. Then you've got to pay for the premises and all of that stuff. Football just, as a business, it's unsustainable.
Right. Incredible, isn't it? Absolutely incredible.
But it's not a popular view to empathise with any football chairman.
Of course it's not. Right, well, we'll see what plays out. We'll see what plays out with Southend United. As I say, thank you very, very much. I want to do it again because honestly, I could have spoke about so many different subjects. Make sure you go onto see Carl, his websites, carlreader.com, his podcast, The Carl Reader Show. Honestly, you'll never get sick of Carl because he's larger than life. He tells it how it is. You don't get any bullshit from him. And honestly, you can learn some stuff personally and professionally. So, Carl, thank you very, very much.
Mate, really kind of you. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Lovely. Thank you.
Cool. Cheers, mate.